Hey, what's up, everybody? Have you ever wondered how you could inspire the world? Reach back with history and take it forward for the culture. Well, my guest today does exactly that. He's a spoken word artist, he's an author, he is an educator, and he's going to take us on a trip through some things that you're not even going to expect. We have a conversation about life, present life, and what he does for a living as an educator and inspiring the community. And I hope you'll be inspired today. So please sit back. This is OneMicNite. I'm Marcos Luis. Thank you for joining me. Here we go. What's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of OneMicNite, the podcast that brings you stories of artists and people on their journey, helping to guide, answer questions, and motivate you in life and the business. You know who I am. It's Marcos Luis. And thank you all for joining me on this journey and helping to document lives and share stories and all of the above. This episode is not any different, but I do want to welcome all the new subscribers that I've had this week, and thank you for joining me. So if it's your first time here, please make sure you click the like button and actually click the bell, because you never know when I'm going to drop another episode, because they're coming so frequently now. But thank you all for joining me, and thank you for all coming back. I want to give one quick shout out to Tremaine Rucker, who's been with me from the start of this podcast. He's been supporting us in the live chat every week, and he's also been making some financial contributions. If you'd like to make some financial contributions to the show, you can do so. You'll find the link down at the bottom. It's greatly appreciated. It takes a lot to make these episodes and keep this podcast running. We're in season 4 right now, and I hope that there's 4 more coming up soon. So without further ado, my guest today is incredible, man. He's been described as a poet, a teacher, an author, storyteller, a father, a black man, and not in any particular order. His name is Rajinii Eddins. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. It's a blessing to be here together with you.
Thank you for making time for us. It's been busy. It's been busy for you and me, so I'm glad you have a little time you can spare with us.
Appreciate it.
Listen, man, I have questions. The first question is, who is Rajinii Eddins and who is Rage?
You took that the acronym. Rajinii Eddins.
Had to.
Rage represents, probably when I was about 11 years old, I learned that all my names combined spelled rage. So Rajinii Alexander Gibson Eddins is what Rage stands for. And Rage was actually the title, A Taste of Rage was the title of my first book of poems that came out in 98 when I graduated high school. Mom had been promising to publish a work of mine since I was a preteen. So she kept it on that promise. And I think there was a lot of rage in that piece. I learned that poetry could be a useful tool to channel my emotions. My mother was the founder of the first Black writers group known as the African American Writers Alliance. So I was the only child member at age 11. So I learned a great deal about the power of artistry and self-expression and being able to convey deep emotions, be able to channel them, to provide a cathartic outlet, to heal, to restore, to inspire, empower, encourage, to affirm, and to touch people's hearts and minds in dynamic ways that can be transformative. So I'm a poet, I'm an artist, I'm a father, an educator, facilitator, a community organizer. I wear a number of hats, as my mother did as well. I saw her always in kind of the realm of wizardry, taking care of all of us 11 kids, and she was also a parent to over 70 children. So I had a lot of younger brothers and sisters, played a big brother role in a lot of young lives over the course of my own childhood. So I wear a number of hats like she does, but I'm fundamentally just a person, a man who cares for a community, who cares about art and creative power and inspiring youth and using self-expression in powerful ways that can transform society and our relationship as human beings. So I believe art has a real fundamental spiritual nature that can be so important in the lives of people when it's really tapped into. So I try to keep that doorway open as much as possible.
Love that. That's essential. Everything you said is essential. And yes, you are. How did you grow up? Where are you from?
Well, I was in San Jose, California,
Mhm.
80, raised from 86 on in Seattle, Washington. In the time of the Central District was still primarily an African-American community. So we grew up in a lot of different powerful ways, inspired by our community, seeing our elders in spaces who, they would pull your coat if they saw you, and having spaces to grow and develop, like the Rites of Passage experience, which your area motivation program. We had a number of different spaces that were hubs for you. They had the Mecca, where we had Friday night sessions, where we had open mics and opportunities for youth to share their self-expression. Mother and I co-founded a group called the Poetry Experience. It started at Douglas Youth Library over at Langston Hughes Cultural Arts Center on the Seattle Center House, a cafe called Ancient Ground, called Phoenix Underground. So we're always active throughout the city. It's such a rich place to grow up in terms of a sincere reflection of the diverse array of the human family. Another when we hear diversity, we get kind of code word for non-white. But like we actually had a reflective array of relationships and connections, friendships for Seattle Support City. So I had friends who were Samoan. So I learned the distinction between like Asian and Pacific Islander. Friends who were Filipino, friends who were Vietnamese, Laotian, and then a wide array of different African connections, Kenya to Eritrea, Ethiopia to Nigeria to Ghana to South Africa, then a wide array of different European descendants, folks with indigenous heritage. So it was really beautiful in that way to connect, and also in a time was considered the golden era of hip hop, where you had to have a standard for your craft and respect for the power of word sound power, and really recognizing that bars were important, like, and meaning, substance behind what you were saying, not just playing with words just to say something witty, but having wit and substance and care about what you wanted to convey was huge amongst my peers at that time. So I think growing up in that era in Seattle, that time being poured into by so many elders who really had care and love for the youth and wanted to foster our gifts, and also growing up around peers who were nurtured by the culture and wanted to express powerful things in their writing and their expression, and convey the ideas they were grappling with their own existence in the world. It's definitely something that's irreplaceable, but I always cherish as part of my development.
Words are definitely powerful. And you're right. That era, that's where it all started, and it was the golden age of words and power and hip hop and poetry. I'm a little surprised though, because I didn't know Seattle had such a, I guess if you think about history, it makes sense, but I never thought about it, but such a diverse community. And also a Black community that was rich in, history in that way, and embracing the history of Africans and African Americans and bringing forth that kind of lifestyle. I had no idea.
Yeah, I mean, growing up there, I kind of took it for granted. And I can understand, when people aren't really present with feet on the ground, they wouldn't really know like the lay of the land. But yeah, it was a definitely incredible place, really rich culturally, and really valuable place to grow up and witness all of this genius. I think too, but when you look at people like Quincy Jones and Jimi Hendrix, folks who grew up to be like really giants in their craft, who were immersed in these communities too. You get a kind of sense for how people were being fed and nourished by these spaces, because of the dynamics of us being cut off from greater society, we had to create our own spaces, and then they become so rich culturally because we're able to just into ourselves. That was one of the ways that I'm learning now too, how integration did us a disservice, because when we were before simply integrated, even if we didn't want to necessarily, it robbed so many educators and principals of jobs, forced people to kind of be diverted into spaces that didn't necessarily have the same rich supports culturally in terms of affirmation of identity and respect and reverence for our origins. So that definitely something to think about. But I'm thankful that I grew up in that window, as many of us may be familiar with, where we had a cohesive and coherent and consistently engaging engagement with Black community, and with love for ourselves, and with actively pouring into ourselves and to our youth, seeing that as a model that's to be consistently played out intergenerationally. There's been so much continuation of the Great Migration in terms of gentrification and displacement. People, you look at Brooklyn, you look at different areas where once like just Black hallmarks, the Harlem Renaissance,
Hey.
And so you look at these places, you're like, wow, what happened to that?
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
But I think for the times that we're able to maintain and create a mainstay for ourselves and then pour that into the next generation, it's powerful, because we've always had to find a way to survive and persevere. And I think it's going to take that same type of energy to create a certain boiling point that allows for people to pour energy and resources into maintaining spaces that have.
Right. And that's what I was going to ask you. How do you think we preserve those? How do you think, I mean, you hit the nail right on the head, especially in a place like Harlem, which is the epicenter of Black culture. When we see the influx of what's happening there, how do we preserve those spaces, those things that are ours, that we built, that remind us, that embrace us of our culture? How do we preserve those?
Well, I mean, I think it's one of those things where we have to be very intentionally mindful and reverent and in unified fashion around the necessity to do so. So we have so many wealthy, moneyed people in the Black community throughout our body of people. We have so much access to the knowledge and history of the meaning, and also how things have been intentionally undermined and conspired against, that it bears for us to create some really powerful connecting forces to think deeply about how to protect ourselves and to actually be integrity-based gatekeepers around our own cultural contributions. So often we're dangled some type of carrot to draw us, and because we don't have access to a lot of resources, it seems like much more of a good deal. But sometimes it's like, you got to read the contract. You got to know what you're giving away, and also have a vision, be part of a vision that includes our people's prosperity, not our individualistic prosperity.
Right. And do you think we as a people think about things like that? Do you think we as people of color even think about that, or is our mindset for something else?
I mean, it's nuanced. It's a great many of us do, and there's a great many of us who don't even have that as on their radar, or know that that's to be cared about. Mm-hmm. But there is some critical thinking around acknowledging how that is the case and how that got to be the case. If we're mindful of people who came before, who intentionally were speaking life into us, recognizing our value. People like Malcolm X and Marcus Garvey, and, Ida B. Wells, people who were like trying to encourage and nurture us to stand strongly in our power and to fight with conviction for the honor of and respect for our own humanity, and to create dynamics that allow for us to prosper collectively. Then we'll be more likely with that knowledge to do something in similar fashion. But if we don't even know about the history, or only see it as history, only see it as something that's antiquated but not still relevant or to be practiced today, and of course we'll miss out a great deal. But we're inundated with so much quick, fast media and kind of isolation, alienation from having autonomy over our own history and sovereignty and agency over our own narrative, it becomes a difficult process. That's why art is so powerful. Hip hop is so powerful. People who still carry on the traditions and legacies are unquestionably irreplaceable, because we have to draw from these people to continue that same progress and reclamation of identity and a reformation of character and what we're claiming we are, standing in our own power. So I think it's so important to do so. Like, it reminds me of a poem my daughter has called "Your Blooming Tree." He says, "Your blooming tree is filled with ancestors, still matching the same vibrant hue. Cinnamon, hazelnut, almond, all you. Never forget that they fought for your freedom. They still have the same brilliant blacknesses who come." Right? So it's like, the same brilliant blacknesses who will come. So she's speaking about people who aren't even here yet. And she wrote this when she was 10. So lets me know, oh, there are children who know this. There's children. Maybe they might not know the word continuum or intergenerational, but they're expressing that understanding that this is intergenerational. We are part of a continuum. We're part of something historical that is still present day. I mean, I believe she actually said that when she was explaining one of her poems. She said, because I know I'm historical. So I came from these great people. I came from Rosa Parks. I came from Martin Luther King, Malcolm X. So they changed the world, so I'm going to change the world too. It's like, oh, so you know that of your greatness, and you know that's part of it. But if you learn from other people, and they tell you you're great and give you the reasons for it, and they tell you what the reasons are not for it, and who not to choose as heroes, then of course you'll be guided another way. Or you won't even look to your own heroes as heroes. So it's definitely important for us to have the reins over our own destiny in terms of fostering that imagination and that awareness of who we've been and who we are.
I agree with you 100%. I feel like right now there's a resurgence of learning and knowing and showing Black history and embracing the culture. I feel like there's a generation under me that really doesn't care. Their mindset is on something else. I don't know if that had to do with the pandemic and feeling hopeless and, a whole nother mindset comes in, some mental health issues and things like that. I don't know if that's what it is, but I feel like, as you said, maybe people your daughter's age, they are embracing it a lot more too, because their parents are doing the same thing. And then the generation under us, really, they not really care as much. I don't know. That's my take on it. I've seen that happen. I don't know if that's the case or not, but in any case, I feel like that because of the George Floyd murder, there's definitely been a resurgence. And I think you and I have spoke about this before, coming from being a product of the affirmative action and going to an all-white boarding school, top 10 university. There's a part of the culture that I missed, that I am today years old and I'm finding out, and it's exciting for me. It's important to me, and I'm seeking as much knowledge as I can, to pursue that. I'm learning all these things. Yesterday, something blew my mind. I read that there were breeding camps for slaves, like things I never even thought about. They would have all the women in one barn, and then they would choose a male to go and impregnate the women to get the best looking slaves and workers, and then either sell them off or use them. Things like that blow my mind. These are things that are, erased from our history books. They don't talk about that stuff. These are important things for us to know. We have to know these things.
Right.
Yeah, I don't even know what else to say about that. That's just,
And these are the things that are so vital, because once we know the ways that people have dehumanized us and set certain patterns in play in terms of our consciousness, then we can have a more clarity-based mindset around who we actually are, beyond people's perceptions of us, beyond the things that we've been accosted with by, the brutal actions of people of European descent and the systems that have been created out of white supremacy, this notion of white so-called supremacy. We can kind of reckon with that psychological and physical and spiritual assault, to be able to preserve our true understanding of ourselves in a healthy and clear-minded way that we can offer something of utility for ourselves and for one's next to come.
Absolutely.
As long as we're being kind of pushed to and fro without clear awareness of what the actual dynamics are at play, or what actually happened to our people before this era and before our grandparents, what they were reckoning with, that sometimes they didn't even speak on, just out of wanting to protect us from
Right.
they've encountered.
Yep.
But it's we have to go back now and unpack. And I'm curious about learning from the elders that they're willing to tell their stories. We furnish stories so we can stay clear-minded and rightly aware, and not go back to sleep and have ourselves be in harm's way. Because as long as people can convince you that your history is like relegated to like a sidebar, and then you think you're playing a person in somebody else's story. You think you're playing like a side character in someone else's narrative, but it's actually your story.
It's your story, yeah.
You're foundational not only to your own story, but to the stories of all people in the world. When you trace our story back from Africa to the present, we are the foundational origin story. So unless we recognize that and connect that in meaningful, impactful ways, we will not be able to really offer ourselves or our children a clear understanding of our worth and what our real role is in the world. So I'm always aiming with my art form to try to impact people in that way, to make sure that we get a chance to touch the hearts and minds, to cultivate a deeper critical thinking about our histories, culturally, and different aspects from Africa to the present, so we can see the sheer immensity of this story and really find our own centered, focused in terms of where we find ourselves, as Malcolm said, in that world picture.
Right.
Find out where you are in the world.
Where you are.
Who you are, what your role is. If you think your role is like a pimp or a drug dealer or a prostitute or somebody who's just trying to get over while you have a split second to have some access to funds, like those things, that's one thing.
Right.
But if you know that you have a vibrant role, an intentional role, then it's another thing.
It's a whole another thing.
Right.
And here's the other thing too, is, in this country, we were 3/5 of a person. So we weren't allowed to read or write. So we don't have a written history. For a long period of time, we don't have a written history like the Europeans do. They have books. They wrote books. They documented everything. Our history was oral. We sang our history. We told each other history, and that's how we documented it. So it's important for us to go back, as you said, talk to the elders, find out the information. It's time for us to start telling our stories, as you do through your poetry, as I do through films, as we do through all the mediums of art, so that our story can be told. It's not anything negative. It actually empowers us. It's actually, we should look at it as empowering us, in new ways. As you said, where do we want to fit into this whole picture? Where do we want our lives to go? Where do we want to go as a people, whether personally or as a group of people? Where do you want to go?
And everybody has something to offer in terms of adding to the story. Because if you think about it, history is still present day. It's being played out as we live and breathe. And also our stories are making history,
Yes.
Like all history is just comprised of stories.
Yes.
And whoever gets to tell the story, they get to tell you what it is. But if you don't have reins and agency of your own story, you just got to accept whatever they say. Even if you I feel like that's wrong, but I can't really put my finger on why. But you have that curiosity to find out and learn and dig. It's like, that's what made me learn about Malcolm X. Because I was like, why is he less taught about than Martin? And I heard him in his own words. I was like, oh, I think I know why now.
Yeah.
And then I found out, but he was learning from his father and from Marcus Garvey. Who was Marcus Garvey? What was he saying? Right. And then I come upon John Henry Clark, and I'm like, oh, John Henry Clark, he's a historian. He's primarily self-taught, and he became an educator, goes back and gets his degree. And he's been teaching about the origin of Africa for generations. Like, who are these great men and women and these learned people who asserted their humanity and their genius even in spaces where people were accepting the notion that we didn't have any. And let me learn about them so I can be inspired and garner value from that and be poured into. And then, so it makes me think now, like, oh, this is intergenerational. My mother started the African American Writers Alliance. We started a group here called the Black Artist Showcase, holding platforms for our stories, for Black people to share their poetry, their songs, their music, their musings, their inspirations, challenges they face, all aspects of our existence and experiences, and let them be seen and held to the light in a way that esteems them of having great meaning and substance and value and vitality, even in the midst of people who think otherwise. And then it centers us in our own stories.
Right.
So many times we're, even in our own lives and our own perceptions, we think we're pawns or like somebody else is narrating. And it's like, you gotta get the microphone.
Yeah.
You have to be narrating
Right.
your story and seeing yourself as a centered, focused, integrity-based, agency-driven, powerful force in your own narrative. That way you'll have that empowered sense that you are driving it, that you're the one who's going to give it meaning and substance. And you're even driving it from past stories that you were immersed in, from people who make contributions that you do know of and that you don't know of, that will continue to add to who you are, who we are, and where we're going.
Absolutely.
So I love that so much because it's so important to draw from. It makes me think of this historian, too, Arthur Schomburg. He wrote The Negro Digs Up His Past. He said, by sheer notion that we don't know about us, we're bound to become like the greatest antiquarians. Because we don't necessarily can't trace our story all the way back to a specific place in Africa. We can do this DNA test and check in, but we got to dig and find out who was who, and we got to claim the whole continent.
Right.
Right. So like before, people were claiming like tribes and different aspects, but not everybody was just like, hey, this is a whole continent of folks. But once you do that, there's so much richness and
Right.
power and strength and value. And it's literally the pool of DNA that the entire world of human beings emerges from. There's no more diverse mitochondrial DNA than the Black woman. So it's like just knowing that should make you feel a certain way.
Right. Yeah.
We should walk that way and engage with each other, that type of knowledge and energy in terms of recognition of mutual worth. Because that changes a lot in the way that we work.
We're at a place right now where our current politicians are censoring our works. Ron DeSantis doesn't want certain things in books. How do you feel about that as a writer, as an author, as a poet?
Yeah, I mean, it makes me even more deeply rooted in my conviction that this work is necessary and powerful and irreplaceable and unstoppable. Like if it wasn't so important to learn about these things, these people would not be trying to suppress them.
Yes.
If Black people truly didn't have any meaningful history, people wouldn't worry about suppressing a history being taught. They just present it as is. But they have to go to great lengths to suppress it, hold the noses off sphinxes and different characters and historical statues and creations to isolate people, to attribute their triumphs and contributions to European people, to undermine and omit entire and fabricate history too.
Right. Yeah.
Why would you go to all this length if we weren't great? Like, well, that wouldn't even be necessary. So it's a continuous assault by people who are insecure in their own understanding of their own value.
You said it, the fear. There's a fear and insecurity. Yep.
Fear-based. And honestly, when we have more of a solid scope, a sane appreciation of human family, that would never be an issue, because you would never say, oh my God, let's stop this branch of the tree from learning about the roots. Like, it's a one tree, fam. Like, why are you mad at that doesn't even make sense. Cut off, don't look down. You're just this branch. Like, that doesn't make sense. So why does it make sense with human beings? It doesn't.
Right.
So it just because it's absurd doesn't make it any less dangerous. Right. So that's why we still have to be the ones to continuously assert, even in the midst of this craze of kind of fascist-like attack on our history and on recognizing our worth and value and true contribution. Even more so now, so the children and the people have examples.
Right.
So they see it in the art. So they see examples of brave Black men and Black women standing up, speaking truth to power, honoring who we are, and then exemplifying that for the youth and bringing them into spaces where they can learn about who they are and model something and be affirmed in something that's not self-hate driven. It's not feeding them the same psychological abuse that keeps people repressed and in self-destructive patterns. As soon as we know about who we are and know we're great, if you're told you're great and showed you're great continuously, what choice do you have but to be great?
Right. Yeah.
Right. So it's like, if we have to pour in that type of energy and look at these times as another opportunity that will challenge us to rise to our greatness.
Right. Unless you're being held back by a society, that doesn't want you to advance, which is why diversity and inclusion is important, which is why affirmative action is important. It's important because not just because you're picking random, people of color, and placing them in jobs. It's because it's giving them an opportunity, going into places where they're actively seeking people of color who have high achievements, who are as equal as anybody else, and giving them the opportunity or giving them the funds to go to school with the other people and then be able to advance in the job market. That's why those programs are important.
Of course, but if you don't even know the background of how people were deprived, it looks like somebody's giving us a special.
Exactly. Right.
But how do you make it right? It's not even making it right completely. It's not even addressing the history of consistent deprivation.
Right.
Like, if you're not tracing the history of people who've been enslaved, then when they were so-called freed, they suffered another 100 years of terrorism and domestic, attack, lynchings and redlinings and convict leasing, and
burning down cities.
Right.
Yeah.
So you have a history of this domestic terrorism after we were so-called emancipated. But emancipate, so you got to be careful with words, means to free up as from a purchaser. So if you give any credence to being freed by a document called the Emancipation Proclamation, then you admit to being an item, because one can't be justly enslaved or freed, because freedom is something that's God-given. Freedom is something that's inherent. So no one has the right to free you. It might have been better to make a proclamation of restitution, as Malcolm X said, than an emancipation proclamation, because we were never items. It was never just to steal us away from our loved ones and to sell us off as items and cattle and livestock in the first place.
Right. It was not but it happened. And that was the thing they created. Yeah. The Christians created the laws that
repair.
Yeah.
Necessary. And so affirmative action, coming back to your point, that's one topical gesture. That's not even touching it, because the main people who are the beneficiaries of affirmative action are actually white women, not even Black people. So just using us as kind of a Pavlovian dog knee-jerk reaction, because anything people portray as serving Black people is looked at as, oh, we're going to go against it. It's been the oldest trick in the book.
Yeah.
There were Black people directly following our so-called freedom, even when we were freed into the lands in the hands of our former captors, with no program of action to change their mindset about us. So it's going to change their behavior about us. You have this short span window where we're still subject to the same mistreatment of these people, but you actually had a path laid for a brief window. There were 12 years where Black men were in positions of power during Reconstruction, where you had actual representation of people who had been formerly enslaved and had been war heroes, who were doing the most, not just to serve Black people, but to serve poor white people, to serve the whole country. Yep. And then white people went against their own interests, which is a pattern, just because they saw Black people in power. And they were so psychologically enthralled with this false concept that their skin color meant that they were superior to us. They couldn't even see clearly that they had a vested interest in partnering and unifying and seeing that the actual policies and procedures that were being designed were for everybody's best interests. So it sounds familiar. So it's like those things are, unless we learn about the history that people have faced and actually have care and compassion, not that, oh, that happened so long ago. Like, you would never say that about the Jewish Holocaust. You look at that like a Nazi.
Right.
But Black people, you can, oh, that happened so long ago. Why are you still nattering on about that? Like, what do you mean? These people were burned at the stake and hung, and that happened in my grandmother's, my great grandmother's era and chapter
Sure,
of
yeah.
life. You think that what still translates to me. And if you have that kind of cavalier attitude for another human being, you have to look at yourself as why you can't claim to be a moral and humane human being if you have that type of outlook.
Right.
So it has to be named and shamed. It has to be exposed and say, hey, if you really say you're this person, you say you have these ideals, you say you're about this morality, then keep that same energy for Black people. And then if you're awake and aware enough to know this, anything that has advanced Black people advances everybody. That's just a matter of course,
Sure.
but it makes sense because we're the source of all the human family. So you should want to support your roots. You should want to support the whole human family and seeing people mutually prosperous. And if you do not, then you have to do some self-reflection and think about why that's not the case, or what you've been taught that has distanced you from having heartfelt feeling and compassion for the plight of people who have been consistently conspired against since the origin of this country.
Which is the answer. It is what they've been taught. And that's unfortunate because we see it played out in so many different ways, even with the brutality of the police, still ongoing. Yeah. So I don't know how we change that. I do want to talk really quickly too about, I saw you recently in the Vermont Public Podcast. I think you were episode 4, and they did a special feature on you, and you did some incredible, incredible work. So I'm going to put the link down in the podcast episode for everybody to please check that out too. But I want to talk about a couple of pieces you had in there. You had one that was written by your mother a few years back, and you addressed some really important issues, and I liked how you did it. So tell us about that, and then I'll ask you the question that I wanted to ask.
Oh, yes, I love this one. It's actually called "I Like There to Be a War When Nobody Came."
Mm-hmm.
It was written shortly after 9/11. So my mother, being a mother, also being very much connected to community and having love for children, for people, I think wanted to express the need to end war. Understanding that in war, no one truly wins. In war, there's always a cost of human life. So someone always loses a loved one. So also often in war, people who are sent to fight wars are not always all the way clued in on what the wars are really about.
Right.
Right? They're told on the surface they're for one thing, but they might be for something else entirely that has nothing to do with some type of positive outcome. More so for self-aggrandizement and like giving access to greater resources of other people's. So understanding that the message of the song, "I Like There to Be a War Where Nobody Came," was kind of speaking about non-compromise with justice, because what would happen if we were sent to fight and then we just didn't go? Everybody didn't go. So they sent the police or somebody else to make us go. And then they didn't go. Who are they going to send?
Right.
Right? Where's the war at then? So it's like, it's something to think about. Sometimes people think like, oh, this is too idealistic, but idealistic has to do with ideals. Everything starts as an idea, and it's about us being aware of our own agency. Because if we compromise with injustice and things that we don't really believe in, it's a slippery slope into just being enslaved to whatever people want to manipulate into doing or believing. But if you know you always have agency and power on, right, then you can choose not to. You can decide not to, and you can choose to put your energy where you really see it bearing positive fruit. That's why I love that. So I sing that as a matter of course wherever I go, whenever I engage with students or adults or in schools, just to plant that seed of peace for non-compromise. To say, hey, can you imagine? Everything starts with imagination. Can you imagine a world where there's not a war happening? And what would that look like?
What would that look like? And I like this too. And I'm going to jump in here because I like the way it's written. It goes back to the old slave call and response type of thing. So you say something and then it's interactive with the audience responds. So it's like the old call and response thing that we had back in the day. And I like that. It's so engaging and so, it just drives home some points.
Need that repetition is how
you need
solidify it in the mind, and call and response predates our slavery.
Right.
Goes back to the African continent. That's something that's freely created by our elders and our ancestors that's still carried on through our enslavement to today. But that's something that predates our enslavement. That's oldest time. Call and response. It's always a way to breathe life into a message, to get an assent from the communal collective that's present. So I say it and the body says it and we all feel it. Right. I like there to be a war where nobody came. Then it's like you just fill in the gap. I like there to be a war where
nobody came.
Yeah, see,
yeah.
And it
feels good.
Yeah.
It's freeing.
Yeah, we need that vibration. Yeah. And you got to immerse it in the word and the meaning so that people can receive that value and that virtue. And it carries on, it stays in your mind. All those things that we plant in terms of the things that we think, say, and do, they have reverberations. So whatever we think and say and do the most, those are the things that are going to flourish.
Right.
I try to sing that as much as possible. I have a vision where that'll be sung with the United Nations one day. That's a worldwide thing.
Absolutely. I was thinking the same thing. Yeah. That's a perfect
matter of time and consistency, because it needs to be shared, and it's something that the whole world, when in a clear mind, could not do but embrace for its healthy appreciation of all of our shared value. That we're all worthy of peace, of love, of a life. We have access to resources where food is a human right, housing is a human right. Right. Education is a human right. Access to clean air and clean water is a human right. Right. All these things that allow us to be brought to our highest maximum human fulfillment are human rights. And sanity says that should be successful. But greed and vanity says I should only have it, or we should only have it. So it's important to know what we're standing for.
Love it. You had another piece in there. It's called Cup of Joe. And you say you say some names in there, and it just drove a lot of things home with me. Tell us a little bit about that piece.
Oh, you're thinking of for Trayvon, the name.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, the Trayvon. Yeah.
Yeah, for Trayvon, Mike Brown, the accountant's unnamed.
Jordan Davis, Akai Gurley, Darian Hunt, Michael Brown, Kajeen Powell, Tamir Rice, Rakia Boyd, Ayanna Jones, Chavez Carter, Yvette Smith, David Latham, Jason Harrison, Matthew Paulo, Amadou Diallo. His name, he has a name. His name is I Can't Breathe. His name is Emmett Till. His name. You must remember his name. James Byrd Jr. He may whisper it in the wind. You may hear it in your skin. His name is Guilty in his innocence. Freedom fighter, martyr, troublemaker. Malcolm X, Martin Luther King, he has a name. His name is Black Boy, blacklisted, blackballed. His name is Black Power. Black babies in the black market for green cash. Stolen life, tied to a tree, burnt at the stake. His name, probable cause, the Negro problem, chalk outline, white man's fear. His name, ear for souvenir. His name, Black Nigger Boy. Fred Hampton, Huey P. Newton, Medgar Evers. His name saves lives, mobilizes movements. His name is Watch for a Black Messiah, Bullet to the Heart, Boy in Jaws of Wolf, White Girl Called Rape, Whistle Too Free, Head Too High. His name looked me in my eye. His name must die. Gangster, thug, menace, stereotype. His name is Wretched Like Demon. His name is taken to the Iron Bridge on Main Street. His name's legs are pulled until its neck cracks. Stabbed, hung, shot, burned, ravaged by relic hunters. His name is Mistaken Identity. Scottsboro Boys, Tuskegee Experiments, David Walker, living, breathing black manhood. Heathen, pagan, no salvation. His name is You Free Nigga, get over it. Kunta Kinte, Stolen African, Strange Fruit, Stranger in a Strange Land, In Danger of Deranged Hands, Enemy of the State, Genetic Center, Asphalt Art, Bloody Memory, Collateral Damage, White Man's Burden. That happened so long ago. Chain Gang, Wage Slave, Chattel, On the Rack, In the Irons, On the Run, Wanted. His name is Arthritic Hands that felt more thistles than cotton. His name is Put Your Hands Up, Spread them, Stop or I'll Shoot. His name is Bang. 41 shots. Asada Shakur, Angela Davis, Breakfast Program, Black Panther Party for Self-Defense. His name is, he has a name. His name is Beaten Severely, Urinated on, Chained by the ankles. His name is Dragged 50 miles and Decapitated. 81 places have the remains. His name is Missing an Arm. His name is Crackhead, War on Drugs, War on Poverty, Scapegoat, Sacrificial Lamb. His name is Kicked Carcass, Convict, Criminal, Thief, Drug Dealer, Victim.
Yeah, that was a piece that was written with my good friend and fellow poet, Chelsea Richardson, back home in Seattle, Washington, around the time that the trial with George Zimmerman was going on. And then I had been writing together for some time, just trying to figure out how we're going to address this litany of names that kept arising, and thinking about what we wanted to write specifically around Zimmerman's trial, who of course was the off-duty security guard who had been responsible for the death of Trayvon Martin because he accosted him when he was walking home from a convenience store with a Skittles and an Arizona iced tea, thinking that he didn't belong in his own neighborhood. And then when the police even told Zimmerman not to approach the boy, he did so anyway. And then Trayvon, not knowing who this stranger who was trying to fight him was, resisted and defended himself. Then he shot and killed. And the Florida law, Stand Your Ground, allows for Zimmerman to be acquitted, saying that he was defending himself when he was the culprit.
Yeah. And
that's been a pattern of experiences as people of African descent, time immemorial in this country. You know, so people are numb to it and desensitized to it. So we wanted to write something to speak life into that, to make people feel it. So like when she called me and told me that he had been acquitted, she was distraught as we should be.
Right,
and
as everyone was. Yeah.
Right. And she said, listen, why even do this? It's going to keep happening. These people are never going to change. You know what I'm saying? That's why. What's the purpose of? And I just had to tell her, like, no, we have these gifts for this purpose, and we're going to use it, because even if we can change one person or change one mind, that person is going to change someone too. It's about utilizing our gifts for this purpose, though. And then I was, trying to convince her and me, and I got off the phone. And I just wept, and I wrote that piece that night. I didn't know how much history I was holding within me, all these different aspects, but I felt like at certain times artists are like vessels or channels for things that need to be delivered to the masses. So I felt like that was a moment for me. I was like, okay, I have to get this all out, not only just for my own catharsis, so I don't go insane with rage or grief, but also so I can use it as a mirror to hold up to society to say, now, what do you think about this? If you don't like it, what are you going to do to change it? And if you feel the grief in this, then let that be a catalyst for how you behave as a human being and how you move in the world, and how you put your energy forth to help transform that dynamic in the world, so that the future children don't have to encounter that. Like I love that piece for so many reasons, but mainly because it brings me to a space where I'm so viscerally connected to the litany, that I have to inhabit it and then give it to the people so they can't run away from it. So they can't look at it like a Rembrandt, like, oh, that's interesting, or I like those colors. Like, no, you have to feel it. Like, oh God, right. He said everything.
It's in your face. Yeah.
Right, and it's from the heart,
From the
and
heart.
it's telling. You can use that as a syllabus uh, of American history, of the history of domestic terrorism against Black people throughout America. It goes back over a century, and what it really proves is that this is not post-racial, because it never ceased. There's no, oh, it stopped then, no, it never stopped.
Right. Yeah.
And now you have technology and you have different ways to document it, but it never ceased. So now it's about admitting that. And like, once you own up to it, you have to actually do something about it. Otherwise, you can't pretend like you're a good human being and still maintaining this interest in keeping people suffering and pretending like it's not your issue.
And as you said, you do it, and we all do it in different ways. You as an artist, you make words, you speak the words. If you're behind the computer and you're good on the computer, you send letters, you do, but we all have a part. We all play an integral part in stopping this, and it's important for us to do. It's important for us to take action.
It's vital.
It's vital.
You have to find your own way, whatever your passion is or your purpose is or your interest is, like it speaks to you, that makes you come alive, like do that, and do that in honor of not only just serving your gift, but in helping to make the world a more peaceful and welcoming and embracing place for us all. And if everyone did that, it'd be a totally different world.
Completely different world.
So about how we encourage people to see that as possibility, though.
Right.
And also bring to fruition like Paul Robeson and Nina Simone. Those are artists who like exemplary and like bringing to life what the world is and also what it can be. So I feel like you're responsible to do both. It's like, yeah, you can articulate what is happening, what has transpired, and why this needs to change. You can also speak life into what can be to offer greater possibilities. Because there's a road forward too. There's a path to realizing the things that we envision that sometimes seem out of reach.
Are you hopeful?
Always. I think as long as it's like I always take it from the greats. It's like James Baldwin. He said, I can't be a pessimist because I'm alive. I feel like that's deep. It's like, oh, you have life and breath. So you can't say it's all for naught because you're still here. Life and breath means you have time and opportunity.
Right.
A lot of people will trade with you in a heartbeat who didn't wake up today with a heartbeat. So you could either spend this time being like, oh, it's not going to work, but that seems like an awful waste of time because you're still here and you could be actually doing something. But I do get like the world is a place that you can be inundated with so much grief and suffering that's hard to see. So that's why it's important to be responsible to yourself for cultivating and nurturing yourself with things that inspire, with intentionally nourishing your mind, your spirit, your body with things that fulfill you, raise your energy, and get you to see greater possibilities as viable. Because if you don't, no one's going to do it for you.
Right.
I'll do it for you, but
yeah, you're right. But ultimately, we're responsible for ourselves. You're responsible to raise your own vibrations. And you have to. And you have to
do that in tandem. You find your source of people who you have that reciprocal energy with. Then you can be a mutual gift to each other. So it's about finding those truths, finding those people who equally feeding off of and equally nourishing to you. So you can have that space. And then if you can't get it from people, get it from people who have spoken the truth and necessity for transformation in the past.
Right.
Get it from ancestors, get it from any source that you can. Because that's what we really shown promise in. We're the great way makers. We always make a way out of nowhere. That's us to a fault. We did that before there were any other people. We still do that even in the dire straits today. It's
Amen.
Got to use that.
Let's talk about you're an author. You have a couple books out. Are some of these the poetry that you did on the podcast, the Vermont podcast?
Definitely 2 books thus far since I transitioned into full-time employment as an artist and poet. Amen.
Amen to that.
Right. Now, so the first one was called "Their Names Are Mine," and it's that's the text that
Yes,
houses
sir.
on Mike Brown and the Countless Unnamed. So I did, of course, a selection from here. I also shared a piece from my newest text, which is called "In the Coded Language of the Smolder Tongue," which kind of, has my moms and my folks all plastered all over it. God bless Randy Eddins and the Eddins family. And that, of course, has a piece, Beautiful Sun-Kissed People, honoring with reverence and respect the beauty and brilliance of Black people, past, present, and future. Those are my two texts right now. I have a new text coming out actually next month called "Free Rights and Other Uncommon Routes to Black Boy Joy." So you can find all these things at www.rajiniieeddins.com.
There you go. And we'll definitely have the links to that in there. Listen, I could talk to you all day long. Anything else you want to mention? What else do you have coming up? Are you performing anywhere that we can see you that you know of right now?
Yeah, I mean, you look for us on Instagram as well at Black Artist Showcase VT. That's BLACKARTISTS SHOWCASE VT. So you can get access to events that we have. We have live streamings of Black Artist Showcases. We have opportunities to connect to writing circles that are virtual and in person here in Burlington, Vermont. And we're also going to be doing a 25-year anniversary celebration of the poetry experience in September, which will be advertised on that means as well. So definitely get tapped in, check out the website, Rajinii Eddins, check out the Instagram and join us and connect, and definitely feel free to reach out if you'd like to do some collaboration or hold space for any type of youth engagement or community sharing.
I can sit in as just as a viewer to watch the virtual.
Definitely.
I don't have to participate. Okay, because I'm not that great with the poetry, but
Hey,
I've done a few pieces, but I'm definitely going to tap into that and check it out. I don't even know if you know, that's how this started. OneMicNite started as an open mic here in New York City 17 years ago. So I started in a small restaurant in the West Village, and I was trying to generate some business. I was a manager and tried to, I invited a woman that used to perform in another place that I worked at to come in and play her guitar. She came in, propped the door open, people started walking in. And I said, oh, this kind of works. I'm going to invite some poets here next week. You invite some more musicians. Let's see what happens. So it just got bigger and bigger and bigger. Got kicked out. That night, a guy from a nightclub came. He said, this is amazing. If you ever, I don't know if you know who Corey Glover is from the group Living Color. He was on Jesus Christ Superstar on Broadway. Corey came in. Long story short, he blew the roof off of the place with his powerful voice. They kicked us out. Next week, so we had it in a nightclub, and it just grew and grew and grew and grew. 17 years later, it's a virtual podcast now. I stopped doing the live edition of it for now, but it's a podcast. So that's how I started. It's poetry and comedy and an open mic as OneMicNite.
I love that.
Yeah, right? And I used to host a show. I was back when YouTube first started. Used to turn on the camera, the HQ camera, not even HD, up on top of the bar, run down, introduce the guest, run back up, turn it off, turn it back on, because I didn't have editing equipment to put it on YouTube. I just uploaded straight into YouTube.
Wow.
So I have all these videos from 2005 in my YouTube account. But that's how we started doing poetry and, you know, serving the community and getting people on the mic to share their stories.
Beautiful. Continued success to you.
Thank you. Thank you. So for you, thank you. Please come back anytime. I appreciate you, and I appreciate your inspiration, and thank you for doing what you do for the community. You're amazing. Not only am I going to get a book from you, but I'm going to send you a OneMicNite t-shirt, which is now available on my store, Azules EN. So you guys check out the new Azules t-shirts. I mean, the new OneMicNite t-shirts on Azules EN. But I appreciate you so much. Thank you.
My honor for holding space. Appreciate you, brother.
Thank you. So we'll see you next time on OneMicNite. Follow me at Marcos Luis, MarcosLuis. Follow the show at OneMicNite, OneMicNite. See you next time. Well. Hey, what's up, everybody? It's Marcos Luis here. Take a moment and go down to the Azules EN store link. That's our store. It's elements of living, ways to live your life the best you can. We have everything in there, from these beautiful chakra bracelets that are handmade to essential oils to help you, things for your back and physical and mental, candles. So please check us out. We also are going to have art for sale by Azulezian artist Ennio Polanco, as well as a lot of other things of his creation. So drop down, make sure you click the link and see where we have everything's already 15% off in the store. Thank you for joining me.